Okay, today is October 21st, 2021, fall ba230, and we're going to be talking about the court systems and dispute resolution. And we're going to start on page 23. Actually, we're going to come back to this page, but we're going to lead up to this page. So today I want to talk about, we've talked about jurisdiction last time, about how you determine which of all of the thousands of courts that we have here in the United States is the correct court that has proper jurisdiction. So now let's talk about the various courts and kind of how the court systems are structured here in the United States. So I'm going to just start by drawing a diagram here. So basically, if you'll remember from sources of law, we talked about the funnel theory. I always forget to do this. All right, so if you remember sources of law, we talked about the funnel theory, where you start off with higher source of law at the top, and then you work your way down until it becomes very detailed, so it's like a funneling effect. Well, we kind of have the flip side when we talk about courts. That is, we start off on the bottom with a whole bunch of courts, and then as you work your way up the chain, you get to a smaller and smaller number of courts, and also each number of court has more authority. So it's kind of a flip. So at the bottom we have trial courts, which we talked about, and then we have appellate courts, level 1, and then usually we have an appellate court level 2, which ultimately would be the Supreme Court. So something like that. So basically, the idea is, at the very basic level, we have a trial court, okay? And as we talked about last time, we have trial courts both at the federal level and at the state level. We have court systems at both federal level and state level. But they're structured in basically the same format. That is, at the lowest level, we have trial courts. And again, if you'll remember from last time, a trial court is a court where it has original jurisdiction. That is where you have to initiate a case, either a criminal or civil. It must begin in the correct trial court that has both personal jurisdiction and subject matter jurisdiction. So all cases are going to start there. And if you'll remember from last time, we roughly have 94 federal trial courts, which I'll get to more in a moment. And when it comes to state trial courts, there are literally thousands of them. I mean, across the country, maybe 10,000. I don't know. I'm not sure if there's ever been a study on that. But the long story short is there are far more trial courts than appellate courts. And the reason for that is a couple things. Number one, most cases never get appealed. Most cases go to trial, and that's it. And the reason for that is, number one, appealing a case can be very expensive. Number two, your likelihood of winning is pretty low, so long as all the procedures were followed in the trial court. So most courts that we're going to have in the United States are going to be a trial level court. So the next step is first level appellate court. Now remember, an appellate court is a court like in football. The video booth upstairs, it is their job to review what took place during the trial, to make sure that the judge at the trial court level made the correct decisions, that the decisions regarding questions of law were correct in terms of constitutionality, conduct of the police, the introduction of evidence, and that kind of thing. So the basic idea is you go to trial, and if you lose, you have the ability to appeal to the first level of appeals. And that's true both at the state level and at the federal level. And then from there, we typically will have appellate level 2, which would be like a Supreme Court. So depending on what system you're in the federal system, of course, it's the United States Supreme Court. In a state system, in Oregon, for example, it would be the Oregon State Supreme Court. So it's the highest level court within whatever jurisdiction you're at. Typically speaking, the Supreme Court or the highest level appellate court in both the federal and state, they're very selective in the type of cases they take. They don't take on nearly as many as the First Court of Appeals, and again, most cases never even get appealed. So it's the same idea. You start at the lowest level of court, and you work your way up to the first level of appeals, and then you can ask for further review at the highest level court. So it's kind of a triangle, or a reverse funnel, if you will. So with that said, let's go to page 38. This is out of the textbook. It didn't photocopy very well. Okay, so this is a diagram of the federal court system. So at the bottom level, we have the trial courts that we have in the United States. Now, the two main ones I want you to know about are what's called the federal district courts and federal bankruptcy court. Those are the two primary types of trial courts at the federal system. And each state, as we talked about, is going to have at least one federal district court. Some states have up to 4, like California has 4 federal districts. So if I'm going to file a lawsuit in the federal court system or initiate a criminal case in the federal system, I'm going to begin at the federal U.S. District Court for whatever state geographical location. And I'll show you a map of that here in just a minute. We also have U.S. bankruptcy courts. U.S. bankruptcy courts are a form of a trial court for exclusive jurisdiction of bankruptcy. So if you cannot pay your obligations, you can file for bankruptcy protection. That has to be done in a bankruptcy court, which is a federal court. There are no state bankruptcy courts. That's right out of the U.S. Constitution. All bankruptcy courts are federal. And so that's a form of a trial court. It's actually a subset in the real world of the district court. Now we have other trial courts, U.S. Tax Court, Court of International Trade, U.S. Claims Court, and the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office has a form of a court process. And then various agencies that have their own internal administrative courts. You don't really need to know about those. The two I want you to know about are the U.S. District Court and the federal court. So if you look at, and you don't need to change your page, just look up here. This is on page 21. But we looked at this before. This is a map of the U.S. federal court system, sort of. And the way it divides up again, we have district courts, which are the trial court. So I'll blow up Oregon and Washington and California here. So in Washington, there are 2 districts, and this is based upon population. We have the Western District and the Eastern District for the state of Washington. So those are federal trial courts. So we have a federal U.S. District Court for the Western District and a U.S. District Court for the Eastern District of Washington. Oregon, we only have 1 federal court district. However, they do hold court in different locations in Oregon, Portland, Eugene, Pendleton, and other places depending. But technically, we're only 1 federal district. That may change as Oregon population grows over time. If you look down here in California, they have 4 districts based upon their population. The Southern District, the Central District, the Northern, and the Eastern District. And those are the U.S. District Courts. So again, from a trial court standpoint, the district courts are the trial courts. So each state has at least 1 district. Some states will have more than 1, up to a maximum of 4. And altogether there are if I remember correctly, I think I want to say 94, it might be 96, I don't remember off the top of my head. But So we have 1 in each state for sure, that's 50. Some states have up to 4, but altogether there's on average about 2. So 94 federal district courts. And again, there is a bankruptcy court within each state. That's a subset of the district court. So the basic trial court at the federal level will be the U.S. Federal District Court. That's what I'm leading up to. That's what I want you to know. I'll show you that again here in a minute. From there, if you want to appeal in the federal court system, you have 2 avenues. If your case originated in one of the federal district courts, you're going to go to the Circuit Court of Appeals. If your case originated in one of the, like the Court of International Trade, then you'll go to the Court of Appeals for the Federal Circuit, which is in Washington, D.C. So there are a total of 13 altogether federal courts of appeal. And the way that that works, I'll show you. These are those dots. We looked at this in a previous class. But each of those dots represents a circuit court of appeal. And what that means is if you go to trial within that circuit and you lose and you want to appeal, you appeal to the Circuit Court of Appeals for the district that you're in, or the circuit that you're in. So here, we in the West are in the 9th Circuit. So the 9th Circuit Court of Appeals, you may have heard that before, read that in the news. That encompasses the western states, Alaska, Hawaii, Guam, Mariana Protectorate, Islands. So if I'm going to appeal, if I go to federal court here in Oregon and I lose, I can appeal to the United States Circuit Court of Appeals for the 9th Circuit, which is located in San Francisco, although they do hold court elsewhere throughout the West, sometimes here in Oregon, sometimes Seattle, just kind of depends. Sometimes they rove around. So the states are broken up into these various circuits. There are 11 numbered circuit courts of appeal, and that will depend on which state you're in. So here the mountain states are in the 10th Circuit, Midwestern states are in the 8th Circuit, the southern central states, the 5th Circuit, southeastern, 11th Circuit. If you look up on the East Coast, northern East Coast, 1st, 2nd, and 3rd are pretty small. The reason why is these are all based on population at the time. They were created, so they roughly had equal population. Now, obviously, nowadays, the 9th Circuit, I mean, we could probably break it into 3 in terms of population, just California alone with all the population. And there's a lot of discussion about maybe breaking up the 9th Circuit because it is the largest appellate court circuit. But they've been talking about that now, oh geez, since I was an undergrad, that's 30 years ago, so wow. Anyway, so we have 11 numbered federal court circuits, and then there are 2 additional ones, and that is the Circuit Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia, and then the Federal Circuit Court, which is also in Washington, D.C. The only one I really want you to know about is the 9th Circuit, okay? We in the West are in the 9th Circuit, and I just want you to have a general idea of how that works. I'm not going to test you, okay, what circuit is New Hampshire in? Don't worry about that. I'm not going to test you on that. I just want you to have this general understanding of trial court, first level of appeals, and then we get to the U.S. Supreme Court, of course, at the very top. And the U.S. Supreme Court, of course, is the highest court that we have in all of the United States in terms of precedential value. If the U.S. Supreme Court issues a decision that is binding precedence on every other court in the U.S., in terms of precedential value on the circuit court level, the way that that works is if a case is issued by the 9th Circuit Court of Appeals, a decision, case law, common law, that will be binding on all of the states within the 9th Circuit. It is not binding on the other circuit courts of appeal. So if we have, let's say in Florida, which is in the 11th Circuit, if we have a case that's the same type of case that we had in the 9th Circuit, very same facts, just different people, sometimes you'll have a situation where the 2 circuit courts issue totally opposite opinions on the very same type of case. So you have essentially the same federal law. However, in the Ninth Circuit, because of court decisions in the Ninth Circuit, the law is interpreted one way. And in the 11th Circuit, this very same law, federal law, but in the 11th Circuit, the court came out with a different decision. That's called a split in the circuits. And this does happen, not a lot, but frequently enough to where it is a problem, because you have federal law that is interpreted differently depending upon which state you live in. Now, that seems kind of weird, doesn't it? So that's one of the type of cases the U.S. Supreme Court, when they're analyzing what type of case do they want to take, because they're very, very selective. I think they get somewhere around 10,000 petitions a year for certiorari, and I think they only approve about 100 of them, so there's not very many. So one of the type of cases that the U.S. Supreme Court, when they're making a decision about what they'll take, is there a law or court decisions that have conflicting Circuit Court of Appeals? So it's a conflict in the circuit. So that way the Supreme Court can come in and say, here's the decision on this law, and that way it'll apply to all of the circuits. That's called split in the circuits. Again, way beyond what I'll test you, but just you'll read that sometime in the news about there being a split in the circuits, and that's what they're talking about, that we have different opinions on the very same thing. Okay, at the state court level, this is on page 39. Again, we have the trial courts, and this will depend, each state has their own various court systems and how they establish things, and I'll show you how Oregon works here in a minute. But basically you have various trial courts, and this would include state, county, and city level courts. I'm going to lump them all in when we say state courts, the various smaller jurisdictions. We also have breakdown depending upon how the state is set up, where you'll have a general division that handles civil trials, criminal trials, small claims courts. Sometimes they'll be broken down into juvenile court, probate court, land court, various different subject matter courts. So, from there you appeal to the first level court of appeals, and from there you would appeal to the highest court in that state, which is usually called the Supreme Court, although sometimes they're called different things in different states. But it's the same idea. You start at the trial level. If you lose, you appeal to the first level of appeal, and then to the higher level. In terms of precedential value, the highest level court in the state, in our case Oregon, is the Oregon Supreme Court, is binding. Any decision that's issued is binding on all of the lower courts. At the trial level, if a judge in one jurisdiction issues a decision, like let's say in Polk County, it's not necessarily binding on a judge in Marion County, because they're at the same level of court. But if the Court of Appeals issues a decision, it is binding on all the trial courts, but not the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court issues a decision, it's binding both on the appellate courts and the lower trial courts. So higher level court binds all the lower courts. Medium level appellate court binds the trial courts, but not the Supreme Court. Make sense? Okay. All right, so with that said, back to page 23. So this is a list of the various courts that deal with cases that come out of Oregon, both at the state level and at the trial level. So let's start with the state courts. So number one, we have small claims court. Small claims court is technically a part of what's the circuit court, but it is intended to provide people with the ability to file their own lawsuit without having a lawyer. It's kind of like People's Court you see on TV, or Judge Judy, or all those kind of TV shows. And the idea is we'll provide a court for civil cases, is not criminal, and it's limited in the type of civil cases. Can't file a divorce case, it has to be a case involving money, and maximum of $10,000. So if you're going to sue somebody for more than $10,000, maybe for breach of contract, like on a business transaction, or an automobile accident or something, you're going to sue them for $20,000, you don't file small claims, because it's limited, exclusive or subject matter jurisdiction is limited to $10,000 or less. I'm actually a big fan of small claims court. You wouldn't think I would be. Lawyers are not actually allowed in small claims. You cannot be represented by a lawyer, you have to do it yourself. And I'm actually a big fan of that. I actually refer my clients to small claims all the time, because I don't want, I mean, you know, $10,000 case in a big scheme of things is not that big a case. And you can rack up attorney fees beyond that very quickly. And so the nice thing about small claims is you can file it yourself. They provide the forms for you at the courthouse. Here in Polk County, where we're at, it's over in Dallas at the Polk County Circuit Court. In Marion, it's downtown Salem at the courthouse there, Marion County Circuit Court. So you can file your own case, provide the forms, pay the filing fee, which is like $85 or something, and then you have the people served by the sheriff, and then they'll have a trial. So it is a trial court. That's why I put T right here. So what does that mean? That means when you go to small claims, you have to be prepared to present evidence at the trial. Photographs and a copy of the contract and witnesses and all of that. You can't just go in and wing it, so to speak. Small claims, however, is a court that has relaxed rules, rules of evidence and court procedures. Because there are no lawyers involved, the judges are a little bit more flexible on allowing different types of evidence than if lawyers were involved. Okay, so the next level, number 2, actually not really the next level, it's a different court system, is what's called a municipal court. A municipal court is a city court. City. So here at Monmouth, we have the Monmouth Municipal Court. Independence has a municipal court, so does Dallas. And the idea of a municipal court is it will handle lower level criminal cases, misdemeanors or lower, no felonies, traffic violations, zoning, violation of city code, which is written by the city council. And the jurisdiction for municipal court is violation of city law, which by definition is the city limits. So Monmouth City Court, if something occurred outside the city limits of Monmouth, the Monmouth Municipal Court would not have jurisdiction because it's outside of their prescribed city boundary. And I've had a couple cases where that has occurred over time, where something happened outside a city limit, and for whatever reason the police gave a person a ticket and we found out, oh, it's outside the city where it occurred, so they had to dismiss the case. From the municipal court, you can appeal if you lose. It is a trial court, and they have jury trials as well as court trials. And for a criminal case, you have a right in Oregon at least to 6 people on a jury for a misdemeanor. From a municipal court, you can then appeal. Sometimes you appeal to the circuit court. Sometimes it's up to the higher court, depending on the type of case. All I want you to know, a municipal court is a city court, okay? Then we have what are called justice courts. We don't have very many of these anymore, but typically these are a court that's set up within a county to handle violations of law outside of a city but within a county, or law involving county code like zoning law or things like that. It used to be that we had justice court districts that may take up a number of counties, where you had a justice that would ride around on a horse and do a circuit kind of thing. We don't have too many of these anymore. We don't have a justice court in Polk County. Marion County still has a couple of them, one in Woodburn, one out in Staten, if I remember correctly. So not a lot of them, but it is also a trial court. Like the municipal court, you do have a right to a jury trial on a crime, but nothing above a misdemeanor. All felonies have to go to the circuit court. And that brings us to number 4. I'm going to put a little star by it. And again, we're talking about the state of Oregon court system. So the primary trial court in the state of Oregon system is called the circuit court for the state of Oregon in whatever county you're in. So we're in Polk County, Oregon here at Western. So we have the Polk County Circuit Court for the state of Oregon, which is located in Dallas. Marion County, Salem, Marion County Circuit Court, Multnomah County Circuit Court in Portland, Washington County Circuit Court in Hillsborough, Clackamas County Circuit Court in Oregon City, Lane County Circuit Court in Eugene. You get the idea. Deschutes County in Bend. So the circuit court is the primary trial court in the state system. That's why I have it highlighted. I want you to know that. I do have a test question. It goes something like this. What is the name of the primary trial court in the state of Oregon system? And I'll give you 4 courts, and you got to pick the right one. The answer is the circuit court in the state of Oregon, whatever county you're in. So the circuit court is a court of general jurisdiction. What that means, excuse me, criminal law, violation of state law, criminal state law, traffic violations, misdemeanors, felonies, jurisdiction all the way up to capital murder cases, civil cases, breach of contract, automobile accidents, family law, divorce, custody, name change, adoptions, probate, post-death administration of somebody's estate. The circuit court has jurisdiction over all of those types of cases. And so it is the primary court in Oregon. We used to have 2, a district court and a circuit court, and they combined them back in the 90s. And so now we just have a circuit court. So it is the primary trial court. And again, each county has one. All right, next we have the Oregon Court of Appeals. That is the first level of appellate court in the Oregon system, located in Salem. And from a circuit court or from a lower level court, as you appeal, that would be the first layer of appeal. And then from there, we have the Oregon Supreme Court, which is also located in Salem. It is the upper level appellate court. It is also the highest court within the state system. So you would appeal from the Oregon Court of Appeals to the state Supreme Court. Okay. Next we have the federal courts that involve the state of Oregon. So again, the primary trial court in the federal court system is known as the district court. So in Oregon, we have the federal district court for the District of Oregon. There are courts in both Portland, Eugene, also in Pendleton. I think they sometimes hold court in Bend as well, but I don't really practice in federal court, so I'm not super familiar with it, even though I am technically licensed. So what I want you to know is the federal district court in each state is the primary court. So if I'm going to file a lawsuit, I'm going to file it in the federal system in federal district court. Now just to recap from last time, remember page 20. If you're going to go to federal court, federal district court, you have to meet one of those 2 jurisdiction requirements, either involving a federal law, federal question jurisdiction, right here, or if it's violation of a state law like traffic code in an automobile accident, you have to prove that the people live in 2 different states and the value of the lawsuit exceeds $75,000. If you can't meet one of those 2 requirements, you cannot go to federal court, you have to go to state court. So in Oregon, we have the federal district court, so you must have one of those 2 types of jurisdiction, either federal question or diversity jurisdiction to go to federal court. Otherwise, you would have to go to the circuit court, okay? I want you to always remember that. If you can't go to federal court, where do you go? State court, okay? So when you're looking at jurisdiction, if you can't meet the federal jurisdiction, one of the two, either federal law or diversity, people live in 2 different states, value exceeds 75,000. If you can't match one of those two, you go to state court. And the reason why I bring that up is I have kind of a detailed test question. It's probably one of my harder questions. Well, I'll give you a little fact pattern involving in multiple states, the dollar value, and I'm going to ask you which courts might have jurisdiction. And that's where you work your way through. Again, always start with where did the event occur? That is, where was the automobile accident? Where was the contract signed? Etc. That's always going to be the first place you should look for jurisdiction. And also, the first place would be the state court. You always start with the state court and work your way up. Okay, the next court we have is the bankruptcy court. And again, bankruptcy is a court of exclusive jurisdiction. You can only file bankruptcy in a bankruptcy court where you live, which is a federal court. It is a trial court, so you do put on evidence. You have sort of an abbreviated trial. Most of that's done by electronic submission nowadays. But it is a trial court. And then from there, you would appeal. In Oregon, we're part of the Ninth Circuit, so you would appeal to the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals in San Francisco. And then from there, you could appeal to the U.S. Supreme Court if they accepted your case, which is very unlikely, mathematically speaking at least. But that's just the progression. All right, now on this page, number 1, in terms of the midterm, fill the blank question. What are 4 courts involving the state of Oregon? And then just pick 4 of any one of these on the page, okay? Another type of question would be, what is the name of the primary trial court in the federal court system? Answer, the Federal District Court. What is the name of the primary trial court in the state of Oregon system? Answer, Circuit Court for the state of Oregon, whatever county you're in. Sometimes I'll do something like this. I will make you put the courts in order of authority. And if I do that, what's always number 1 in terms of level of authority? Supreme. U.S. Supreme Court, always. Okay, so if I give you like 4 courts, U.S. Supreme Court, State Supreme Court, City Court, and Federal Court of Appeal. Put them in order, all right? Well, the highest is U.S. Supreme Court, then Federal Court of Appeal, then State Supreme Court, then a City Court, okay? So that kind of question. Now again, those would be true, false, or multiple choice. This will be fill in the blank, but it's not an essay kind of thing. All right, then at the bottom down here, real quickly, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but we do have other types of tribunals. We have the Oregon Tax Court, which is a trial court. Put that here, trial court. And it's a court of limited jurisdiction involving taxes, either income taxes, excise taxes, an appeal of other type of taxes, whether or not the taxes were properly levied, was the tax calculation correct, that kind of thing. So it's pretty limited. And then we have what are called hearings officers or administrative law judge. All right, sometimes called an ALJ. Let me explain that real quick because this is becoming an area of growth. Has been for about the last 25 years. And so an administrative law judge, when you are accused of violating an administrative rule, so this might be something like your driver's license was suspended for either driving under the influence or reckless driving, or perhaps you have a doctor that wrote a medical opinion that you shouldn't be driving, you have a right to appeal that suspension. Now when you do that, you don't appeal to a court, you appeal to an administrative judge, and you have a hearing. And it's a trial, so the police officer will come in and testify, that they pulled you over for driving under the influence, you blew a .18 on the machine, and therefore your license should be suspended as a matter of law. So same thing like with a fishing license, or I have a law license, so if my law license was going to be suspended, I can contest that. There are various different, if you are running a business, DEQ may issue a citation for violating an environmental rule, like illegal dumping or discharging water without cleaning it properly first with a permit. OSHA, Occupational Safety Health Administration, may issue a fine to an employer that's not providing adequate safety equipment to their workers on the job, those kind of things, okay? So and those fines may be hundreds of thousands of dollars. So you have a right to a hearing, but that's not done in a court. It's done with an administrative judge, and you don't have a right to a jury trial or anything like that. You have the burden of proof to prove you didn't violate the law, so it's quite a bit different than what we're used to in a court system. And then from there, you would appeal to the Court of Appeals. So this has kind of been the trend in administrative law. They've taken violations out of the court system and moved it over to an administrative judicial system. Now from a separation of power standpoint, theoretically speaking, it gets kind of weird because now you have an agency that writes the rule that they enforce and they also interpret. So all three in one agency. That's a different class. All right, so for you guys, we have a list 4 types of courts that involve the state of Oregon system. As fill in the blank, and then be able to put them in rough order. The other thing I want you to know is which one's a trial court and which one's an appellate court. And so I may ask you, true or false, the municipal court in Oregon is an appellate court. Answer, false. It's a trial court. Okay, so that kind of thing. So A for appellate courts and T for trial courts. Well, by the way, I forgot to say, I've seen a couple of you taking pictures with your phones of my overhead. That's fine with me. I just want you to know that. I know some people don't like that. I don't care. So it's a good idea too. That way you get all my notes and stuff. So feel free to do that all you want. I forgot to say that at the beginning. Okay. Let's move on a little bit here. Let's start talking about a dispute and how it might be resolved. And potentially even having to go to court.